Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young, licensed clinical social worker. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there, to the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers. Welcome to episode 21. This is a really amazing interview. I had so much fun talking with Kelly Covert. She has the podcast In Her Voice. And this was such, just a heart-filled, genuine conversation. I really enjoyed it. We start out talking about intuition, and Kelly defines what is intuition. And then we talk about, is one's intuition ever mean or critical? How do you encourage people to get in touch with your intuition? How do we encourage or shut down our kids to get in touch with their intuition? Then the conversation kind of drifted into parenting, and we really talked about the relationship that we have with our kids. And when you have challenging situations with your kids, or your kids are not getting along, or you have kids that are doing things that maybe are not in alignment with your family values, how do you navigate that? And we always seem to circle back to it's really about the relationship. And if you make it about the rules and controlling, that just doesn't seem to foster the kinds of relationships that we want to have with our kids. And Kelly talks about doing a family retreat and their family coming up with a mission statement for their family. I'm going to jump on at the end. I have a couple of thoughts and some things that I want to share, but I just really want to let you enjoy this conversation. Let me tell you a little bit about Kelly. Kelly Covert is an inner voice coach with a passion for helping women believe and achieve their big vision by connecting deeply with the wisdom that's inside of them, all while owning their worthiness each and every day. Throughout her intuitive, heart-centered coaching, she helps women awaken to their true power as creators and world changers. She's the creator and host of In Her Voice, a podcast for women who feel called to do more, to lead, to create, to dream, and to change the world. Her work has been featured on the Huffington Post, The Elephant Journal, YourTango.com, and she's been a featured guest on many podcasts. Kelly is also a professional flutist with Symphoria, a wife and the mother of 2 boys, 15 and 12, and 1 beautiful beagle named Piper. Kelly was kind enough to give me a shout out on Instagram, and if you're interested in seeing what Kelly looks like, hearing Kelly, you can check out my Instagram at Unapologetically Sensitive. And now, on to the show. Hey, Kelly, welcome.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here today.
Me too. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since I've been on the other side of the mic.
Yeah, I hadn't done any guest interviews for a while where I was a guest. And the night before, I got really kind of nervous feeling. So just interesting.
Yeah, it's just a different perspective for sure.
Yeah. So you're one of the guests that I really don't know you very well. I don't know much about you. I discovered your podcast and really liked it and reached out to you. So I'll be getting to know you as I interview you.
Perfect. I love that.
So the first question that I ask all my guests is, do you identify as a highly sensitive person?
Yes, I do. And it's funny because I think that how you came by my podcast was when I interviewed Heather Dominic. And I have never sort of considered myself or classified myself as a highly sensitive person. I'd never heard that term before I was introduced to her. And then when she started talking about it, I was like, oh yeah, that's me. And I had just never heard it called that before, but 100% I am an HSP.
Yeah. Was there anything that came out of that interview that resonated for you because I think often we know about ourselves and we know our traits, but for me, when I found out I was a highly sensitive person, I'm like, oh. And for me, because I think we get so much negative messaging about our traits of sensitivity that when I found out this is a real thing and it's how I'm wired, it felt so validating. Does any of that resonate for you?
Oh, 100%. One of the things that really was a great takeaway for me in that interview was that highly sensitive people can show up in the world in different ways, and that sometimes we don't think of ourselves as being sensitive because of the way that we're showing up. So you may have a person who like pulls back and hides or sort of hibernates, or you may be a person that pushes, or you may be a person that does sort of both of those things. And I'm a what she called a combo platter. I do both of those things. And I always thought that it was, one was just the reaction to the other. And now I realize that was me really kind of overcompensating for the personal traits in my life that I felt like weren't good enough or, weren't what they were supposed to be, instead of just really owning that and allowing it.
Mm-hmm. I think we really have to also honor our rhythms. I think it's along the line of what you're saying, but I think it's a little bit different, that I have periods where I feel more expansive, and that's when I'm going to be making videos and returning emails, and you're going to see me on social media. And when I have times where I need to kind of pull back and recharge, contractive spaces. So really learning to honor my rhythms. And I find so many highly sensitive people judge that, thinking that they're flaky or they can't consistently show up, or when they have expansive periods, they think that they've arrived, and then we get these contracted periods and we feel like something's wrong with us.
So true. That means so true. I feel like it's hard not to judge ourselves when we feel like we need more space and more time to be away. And I've learned that I feel like really I've come to an understanding with myself, with my soul over the past year, that not only do I need to have a lot of grace and allow those times, but I need those times. Like that's what is the fuel for the next period of creativity. And so I can't have one without the other, and that it's okay.
Right. I love that. What do you think of the term highly sensitive person?
I don't have feelings about it one way or the other. I think it's an accurate term when you know what it means, if that makes any sense, right? So I think if I said that to someone who didn't know what that meant, they would be like, what are you talking about? Like, is that a bad thing? Is that a good thing? But it just like any label, I think that it can bring clarity and it can sort of help define what we know to be true about ourselves. It's not something that I feel like I have to tag onto the end of my name or anything, because, it is just part of who I am.
Sure. Okay, so now we're going to get to the meaty stuff.
Yay. I love the meaty stuff.
So we're talking about intuition today, and as I was reflecting about this, I was talking with my friend Laura Carr this morning, who's a therapist. So quite a number of my questions are from Laura, because intuition is something that I think about, but I don't think I've really talked about it a lot. So I'm really fascinated and really curious to kind of jump into our conversation. Can you define intuition for me?
Well, for me, intuition, or what I call my inner voice, is really just that inner voice of wisdom that I believe every single one of us has. And depending on your outlook in life, maybe you think that that is divine, and maybe you think that that's something that is just part of who you are. Regardless of that, I truly believe that we all have that. And if we take the time to be still and to develop practices around listening to that, it can be a guiding force in our lives and really move us in the direction of feeling the way we want to feel every single day, of living a life that is joyful, that is fulfilled, and that is in the moment, in a way that if we're, being guided by external things or by our inner critic, it's going to be much more difficult.
So you kind of hit on one of the questions. Is our intuition ever mean? We have those internal mean voices.
Yeah, those are two separate things for me. So I have what I call my inner mean girl or the inner critic, and that is very much an egocentric voice. I think of it as coming from my head. It's the voice that beats me up. It tells me I'm not good enough. It tells me I should have tried harder, or I can't believe you made that mistake. How could you have been so stupid? And all of these things can roll easily off my tongue, right? Because I've been hearing them in my head for as long as I can remember. And I do not believe that that is my inner voice. That is not my intuition. My inner voice is loving. My inner voice knows my worth. It knows that I am worthy, whether or not I do or do not do. And it guides me. It can be powerful. It can be encouraging. And it can also show us the error of our ways, if you will, but it's never, ever mean. It's never hard. It's never harsh.
I love that. How do you encourage people to explore their intuition or to get friendly with it? I'm not even sure what word we would use.
Yeah. I mean, I just use the word listen. And to me, the words inner voice, I think, resonate with me much more than intuition, although it's the same thing. I mean, that's really just semantics, but I literally hear it like a voice, just like that voice that says, mean things about you. It's the same. It's the same kind of idea, and it comes from within. It bubbles up from our thoughts. And I think that what I really encourage people to do is to start with practices that get us still enough to hear it. And, we've all heard it. I mean, we've all had those moments where we think, oh, I should really do da 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 before I leave the house today. I should grab that umbrella, even though it's sunny outside. I should give a call to the doctor's office before I go because I'm not sure if today is my appointment, or whatever the thing is, right? And either we listen or we don't listen. And oftentimes we do listen and we're like, oh, I listened and I was rewarded by knowing that intuition, that guidance was true. Or we find out later that we should have listened and we didn't. And so it's little moments like that that can begin us down the road of believing, of trusting our intuition, of trusting that inner voice. But if we develop practices daily where we're connecting, where we're doing things that are helping center us into that voice, into that place of listening, it's going to get easier. So what I like to start with, which is one of my favorite ways of connecting with my own inner voice, and I know that it works for a lot of people, is journaling. I find journaling to be something for me that really, when I practice it, gets me out of my head and can bring me into a still, silent place where I can ask the questions that I'm wanting answers for and get true answers.
That makes sense. I'm a verbal processor, and there's an app that I'm still not getting money for talking about called Marco Polo. Have you heard of it?
I think I'm familiar with it. I actually use Voxer, and I actually coach through Voxer as well because I find the same thing. I do like to verbally process sometimes as well. And I have certain friends that I can rely on. Sometimes I won't even be leaving them a message. I'm just doing it for myself.
Right.
So I can go back and listen. And the clients that I have using this coaching program that I have, it's called Inner Voice Coach in Your Pocket. It's really, really valuable in the same sort of way because not everyone and not every day do we have the time to sit down with a pen and paper, but we always have our phone on hand. When we're in the car, we have our thoughts rolling and we can use that to process. I love that.
Right. I have a couple friends that I polo with, and then we really need to get them to set up an account where you can just record and listen to yourself. It's video too. The two things that I love about it is it's only one way. So if you and I are going to polo, I polo you. If you're watching, you can respond with hearts, but there's really not a way that you can interact verbally with me. So you really get into a stream of consciousness. And what I find I have one or two people that I polo with pretty intimately. And I almost always can talk myself through whatever the problem is. I'll start out by going, I'm really having this dilemma, and as I talk my way through it, by the time I'm done, I've kind of come to my solution. And I think there's so much beauty in being able to hear what our stream of consciousness is, whether we're a verbal processor. I know journaling is much more common and familiar for most people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Voxer is the same. And by the way, you can talk to yourself on Voxer.
Oh.
But I've never used Marco Polo. I don't think you can do video with Voxer. It sounds very similar. It's a one-way back and forth exchange, but you can leave voice messages or boxes, I guess they would call them, for yourself too.
Yeah, I've used Voxer before. My guess is that extroverts tend to be more verbal and are verbal processors, and introverts are more thinkers and would probably do better with journaling. I'm not trying to put anybody in a label or a box, but that would be my guess.
I think that's interesting. And I am an introvert. I call myself an extroverted introvert. I'm sort of in the middle, but lean more toward introvert than extrovert. And I do prefer journaling, but I enjoy Voxer as well. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. If you're a highly sensitive person, because I thought I was an introvert, and much as what's been written about introverts really overlaps with HSPs and the people that have done kind of a lot of the very popular introvert education have combined HSPs. So I thought I was an introvert, but I'm a highly sensitive extrovert, and it looks different than your typical introvert. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, see, now if you were on my podcast, I would ask you to tell me more about that.
There is an article, and I'll put it in the show notes. If you go to hsperson.com, it's an article written by Jacqueline Strickland, and I think it's called Introvert, Extrovert, and the Highly Sensitive Person. And I will link to that in the show notes.
Oh, yeah. I would love to read that, because sometimes I wonder about myself too, because I do enjoy being around people. I don't get energy from that. So I've always felt like, well, I recharge when I'm by myself. So that's sort of how I've defined myself as an introvert. But I'm not the kind of person who would choose to stay at home most nights, because I don't want to be with people, if that makes sense.
Wait, so you would or you would not choose to be at home?
I would not. I mean, I love to do things with other people. I just have to have by myself time around that in order to be able to have the energy to be with other people, if that makes sense.
I think you're a highly sensitive extrovert.
Now I'm really curious. I'm going to have to read that article.
When did you get in touch with your inner voice?
This is a really good question. I have always, for as long as I can remember, been a woman of great faith. So, and I start with that because I feel like that was the beginning for me. Like, I've always felt like things that I believe to be possible are possible. And that if something is meant to happen, or if I feel something is going in a certain direction, that I believe that that can happen. And I think for me, that was the basis of my connection with my inner voice, is just having faith in the things that I couldn't see with my eyes. And I think that's one of the challenging things about intuition, is because we can't see it. Like, you know what? We can't prove it. There's not a scientific way to say this is true or this is not true. It's really about belief, and it's about a belief system. And for me, that started very, very young. And I think that certainly what has happened through my life is that I've honed that skill. Really, I think it's a skill of listening. It's not that one person has it and one person doesn't. It's just that you have to be intentional about how you use it and how you listen to it and how you tap into that inner knowing as you move through life on an everyday basis. And I feel that really, for me, when I became a parent, that was the moment where I realized there's more here. Like, I can't just keep pushing. I can't just keep doing this on pure intellect. You know, like my remedy to everything used to be, well, I'll just figure it out. I'll read a book and then I'll know how to do it. And that didn't work when I became a parent. And so that was, I think, for me, the pivotal point of really coming to this place of knowing that I not only do I have it, and it's there for me, but I must live by it, or I'm not going to feel the way that I want to feel. Because I'm not going to be successful at doing the things that I want to do if I'm trying to do what everybody else does.
That's really interesting. As I was listening to you, I have twins that are now 18. And I found parenting really challenging. And both of my boys, I have permission to share this. They have ADHD, they have mood disorders. It was really challenging. In preschool, they actually put them in separate classrooms because they were too much for the teachers to manage, which felt really validating for me. And I really had a hard time trying to figure out how to parent these kids. But it is interesting that I came to some ways of parenting that I felt were very intuitive. I thought I was being permissive. And it wasn't until I did some training with Ross Green on collaborative problem solving that I was actually doing something that had a name and it had a reason. And I had intuitively figured out, because disciplining my kids was incredibly difficult. It didn't work, the traditional methods. And the more I tried to be consistent and follow these books, it just didn't work. So it's interesting that you share that.
Yeah. And as a side note, we worked with a Ross Green taught counselor for a very long time with my oldest son, and I've gone to a conference with him. I highly regard his work with kids who have challenges, in particular behavioral challenges. It was the same thing for me. Like, I was raised in a family where you obeyed, and if you didn't obey, you got in trouble. Like, it was this very black and white formula. Mom and dad had the final say. You don't get to argue. You don't get to have your opinion. This is the way it is. And this is the way it is because I say so. I really, really quickly recognized as my boys grew that not only did that not work, but that like it didn't feel good. It didn't feel right to me. And it was a struggle because I think when you're raised that way, you think, well, that's the right way. This is the way it's supposed to be. And so I had sort of this dual challenge of listening to what I felt was right and then feeling secure in that decision of doing that. Does that make sense? How it's two different things?
Absolutely. And I have a very similar experience that my mom was so anxious that I joked the rules had rules and no meant no. And so I really wanted my kids to have a voice, and I struggle with self-discipline and I struggled with discipline with the kids. But what I hear you talking about is it's really about the relationship and letting go of what the rules are so that you have a meaningful relationship with your kids.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, I also sort of began to understand too this idea of natural consequences, which was like a revelation to me. So the natural consequence of not wearing your jacket when it's 2 degrees outside is that you're going to be cold. So, you know, you don't need to be punished for not wearing your jacket because you are creating a natural circumstance in which you are going to decide next time you're going to wear your jacket. I still let my children go to the bus stop if they choose to go without a jacket. And I know that parents say things to me like, I can't believe you let Noah go to the bus stop without a jacket. It was freezing today. I'm like, you know what? That's his choice. And he is smart enough to make that choice and to like have the consequence of that choice. To me, that's what being a parent is I'm creating opportunities for my children to learn on their own without me. And that's how you create independent adults.
Sure.
I want them to be able to take care of themselves and not to feel like they're doing things just because they're going to get in trouble if they don't.
Right. One of the things that I learned from one of my sons, because there were so many rules and it was kind of almost like henny penny, like if you break the rule, the world will fall apart. And I have a kid who loves to bend the rules as far as he can. Like as long as he doesn't break them, he can bend them as far as he wants. And he is a kid who waits till the last minute. He loses things. When I started to allow him to have his own consequences, what I learned is he's like this kid that the butter on the bread always lands face up. And we had a really interesting talk because what it taught me is you don't have to follow the rules and the world is not a dangerous place. And I was able to talk about my anxiety and like I would sit back waiting for things to fall apart for him and they wouldn't. And it was really upsetting to me because like that was my belief that if you don't follow the rules then something terrible happens. And I'd watch this kid repeatedly not follow the rules and land on his feet.
Isn't it amazing how our children become our best teachers?
Yeah.
I just feel like so much of who I am now, and my oldest will be 16 in April, is because of my kids, because they don't do things like me, because they aren't like me, and because they've challenged me to go to a deeper place of trust in myself to be able to parent them in a way that's true to them. It doesn't have to be true to my mom or to my dad or to how they were raised or to a religion. It's true to who they are. That's really what intuition is about, I think, for ourselves. It's being true to who we are, not to who we think we should be, or to who someone says we should be, or to that person that we think is so great and we want to be like them. It's about being true to ourselves.
I love that. I totally was not planning on going down this parenting path, but since we're here, I'm just like, let's just go for it.
Yeah.
One of the things that has come up is having, I call them kidults, so they're not quite adults and they're not really kids. Legally, they're adults, is having the boys make choices that are not really in alignment with our family values. And this started their senior year of high school. And figuring out that we could come down on them and say, this is forbidden, you can't do this, you can't do it in the house, and knowing full well that they would go out and sneak and do it anyways, or figuring out a way to talk about what our family values are, to set limits about what's acceptable and not acceptable in our home, and to make the relationship the most important thing. And as a result, I love it. Like, my kids will send me videos and texts of stuff that they're doing. Like, it's not really as a mom. I'd much rather have something else.
Right. Like, is this really what you want to send me right now?
And the fact that they're so open with me and that they share this stuff with me, I mean, there's nothing else that I would rather have. And I always have this voice in my head that I know that parents that are very conservative feel like you just shut that down and you shut it down now. And that just doesn't work for me as a human being. It doesn't work for me and my kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Last year, we had a family retreat because, my boys, they're 15 and 12, and they're as different could be. And they don't really get along very well, which breaks my heart. But also, like, it's not required, right? There's no rule that says you have to love your brother unconditionally, although some people might say that. We decided to do a little one-day family retreat, and we rented a hotel room for the day, and we got out of our house and we did some fun games and some exercises and things like that. But the goal of the day was to create our family mission statement. And so it's really about what you're saying. It's about bringing our family values that we created together as a family, the four of us, and highlighting them on a day-to-day basis. So the coverts, like, what are the coverts? Who are the coverts? Who are we? What do we believe in? And that was a really powerful exercise for us. And I have a friend who's a graphic designer, and I had her create like some beautiful watercolor-like images with this statement printed out on it, and I hung them up on our wall. And it's just such a lovely reminder that we can all be who we are, but also this is who our family is, and this is what we believe in, and this is how we live.
I love that. That's just beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it was sort of a breakthrough moment for us as a family, I felt. And I can still refer back to that. And it's nice that we did it when our kids were older too, because they feel like they had a say in that. Like, they were part of that creation of that.
Sure. I don't know if this is, I don't know. What I was thinking about when you were talking is my twins did not get along, and they are very, very, very different. And I had the pleasure of being able to interview them for a few bonus episodes that I did early on in the podcast. And I had asked one of them, he's an introvert, he needs more space. The other one, loves to play cat and mouse. And so he loved getting a reaction out of his brother, even if he ended up getting hurt. That's just how he's wired. He kind of likes the thrill of the chase. So their personalities did not match very well. And I had asked my son, if you had a choice to be a twin, would you? Thinking for sure he would want to be an only child. And he's like, no, I like it. It's fun.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And I told him, that his dad and I really had wondered if the boys would ever be friends, because they really had a lot of conflict in high school because they were so different, and it was very challenging. So Not that you were asking me to give you hope, but I just want to give you a little hope.
Well, I appreciate that. No, it does give me hope. And every now and then, one of my children will say something and I'm like, wait, what was that? Like, do you maybe actually care about your brother a little bit?
Yeah.
It's like I do see a glimmer, a little silver lining behind the gray cloud that hopefully one day they'll be connected in a better way than they are now as teenagers, for sure.
It makes me wonder too about boys that, again, our culture is so not into sensitivity and connection and being independent that I'm almost wondering if that's a self-preservation of pretending that you don't care and that there's friction and tension. I don't think it's anything conscious, but I hadn't really ever thought about it, but I'm wondering if that plays a part in it too.
I think it does. And I actually have thought about it before because my youngest is definitely a highly sensitive kid.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to be tough. Like he wants to be a man. That's what it feels like to me sometimes. And I see him with his friends, and then I see him when he's just with me, and it's different.
Mm-hmm.
I just try to support him in that and just love him through that and not really tell him one way or the other. But I do think that there is a part of that that's true.
Yeah. I always get the name wrong, but there's an author, his name is Ted Zeff, Zeff, and I'll put in the show notes his website, but he has a book, I think it's called The Strong Sensitive Boy, because I think boys really have it tough being sensitive and they tend to go underground with it because it's just not acceptable and all the posturing that goes on for kids. So anyways, there's that.
Yeah. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah. So how do we encourage and how do we shut down intuition in kids?
This is such a good question. And one that I don't fully know the answer to be completely honest. I really try to lead by example when it comes to intuition. I leave, my boys see me journaling. I leave my journals around. I don't think they actually read them, but I have a daily gratitude journal that I keep that I leave open on the table. Like they know that that's how I'm living my life. And the other piece of it too is I will just ask them. I think asking the right questions can be really powerful, not just for kids, but for anyone who is learning how to listen better to their inner voice. So a lot of times what I notice my kids doing is that they make up stories about a situation or a circumstance. They have the most amazing imagination and they will make up the absolute worst case scenario stories for something. I remember this one time, it was raining really hard outside and my kids get on different buses, but at the same time in our neighborhood. And so I drove them to the bus stop and my youngest, of course, didn't want to stay in the car because he was annoyed with his brother. So he gets out and he goes to stand with his friends. And then my oldest was like, oh, I know they're talking about me. And he had this whole story about how they were talking about him and they didn't like him and that he was, they were being mean. And I was like, you know what? You just made all of that up.
Mm-hmm.
You made all of that up. You don't have any idea what they're saying. Oh, but I do. And I was like, oh, but you don't. And I said, for some reason you feel like you have to create a scenario where your brother doesn't like you. And I said, what if he was saying nice things about you? Or what if he wasn't saying anything about you? Imagine that. And, just sort of shifting that perspective, that lens is what I really try to do with my kids. It's not necessarily tapping into intuition, but it's becoming aware that we do have different ways of seeing things and different ways of interpreting things. And that if it's not 100% true, we can't count on the fact that it's true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think there are a couple of things for highly sensitive people because part of how we're wired is we pick up on everything in the environment and subtle cues, facial expressions. So it's not uncommon for us to pick up on something, but the meaning that we attach to it is incorrect.
Yeah.
So it's possible, and I'm not saying this happened for your son, but just for example, that somebody could have grimaced. So the meaning that he attaches is they're talking about me, and it could have been that his socks were in a bunch or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting way to look at it too. And I 100% agree. And I think you're right. As a highly sensitive person, I know that I'm very aware of energy, of what people are putting out. And I have to really be careful there because, like you said, like it could be for a million reasons and not the thing that I think. So I've learned a lot of times I will just be very upfront with people and ask, like, I see that you're getting upset right now. Is everything okay?
Mm-hmm.
Or, I feel like, you're really angry right now. What's going on? And people who are close to me know that they're not going to they're not going to get by if something like that comes up. I'm going to feel it and I will usually ask them about it. I just find it to be so much easier instead of trying to figure out what's happening based on not all of the information. I just like to ask.
I totally agree with you. And I often do that. And often what happens is people are not even aware that they're having a reaction. And I know that I saw a reaction, but sometimes people are not even aware of the level that they're processing or absorbing information. So sometimes I see something and the person says no, and I just have to, depending on who it is, I just have to go, okay.
Okay. Well, I just had a really interesting experience this morning. I also teach flute and I'm a professional musician. And one of my students had to do a jury for 3 faculty members this morning because she has a recital coming up. And how it works is, she'll play and then all of us give comments and then she'll play and we give comments. It's very stressful. She was playing beautifully. And then everyone did have some constructive comments. And I could tell at one point that she was starting to get upset, like thinking that she wasn't doing well. And I said to her, I can see that you're getting upset. I just want you to know you're doing great. And that all of the things that we're saying, you should see as encouragements, not as criticism. One of the other faculty members said, oh, that's really interesting because I can never tell when she's getting upset. It happened to be a male faculty member and someone that I don't I'm acquaintances with, but I'm not friendly with, I guess. It was just a really interesting experience for me because like in my mind, I thought, how could he not see that she was upset? Like, how is that even possible? But, everyone's different and everyone feels and sees different things.
And I think as highly sensitive people, we often think everybody sees and remembers and is as in tune with things as we are, and they're not. And so we often feel really frustrated with like, how come you can't remember what I said? And how come you can't remember to put that back? And didn't you notice that this is how it was when you came in? Because we're just, we're firing on all cylinders all the time.
100%. It's kind of hilarious, really, if you think of it, because the inputs that we have coming in all of the time, like to expect everyone else to be like functioning at that level is kind of a lot to ask if they don't.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we need downtime because we just take in so much that we get so saturated that we need time to kind of get back and regulate.
100%.
There will probably never be an opportunity for me to bring this up again, so I'm just going to jump in. I understand you're a professional flautist.
Yes.
I played flute very poorly in high school and was in the marching band. I was just watching something my mom sent me the other day with this marching band. I could either march or I could play poorly, but I could not do both.
I love that. That's so funny. I hope you had a fun time doing all of it, though.
I think I did. I was average. I was not great. The songs that were really complicated, I couldn't play. But I do remember from marching band and we do field formations, there was no way in the world that I was able to play and remember where I was supposed to be marching in formation.
Yeah, that's funny. And, really, I tell my, flutists I know who do marching band, it doesn't really matter because you can't hear flute in the marching band anyway. So I'm sure that the marching was the most important thing.
Yeah. The piccolos you can hear.
Yeah, for sure. I did years and years of marching band, and I went to undergrad at University of Georgia, where we have a very famous marching band, the Red Coat Marching Band. It's 400 people. It's ginormous. And we had 40 piccolos.
Oh my gosh.
No flutes, only piccolos, 40 piccolos in the piccolo section. So you could hear us, that's for sure.
So you play piccolo and flute?
Yes, actually, professionally, I do too. I play with with Symphoria, which is the professional symphony here in Syracuse, and my position is second flute and piccolo. So piccolo is really what I love.
I'm very impressed.
Thank you. It's so funny because it's just what I do. I forget that not everyone is musical.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the same thing as what you were saying about being highly sensitive. Like you become so comfortable with the gifts and talents that you have that you don't think of them so much as being gifts and talents anymore.
Sure.
That it's just like something else. It's just something that you do. And I think that it's important to kind of remember that everyone has these amazing things about them that are so individual and so unique and so important, and that we can give ourselves credit for those, and that we can think of ourselves as being special, and we can think of ourselves as being talented. And that really does wonderful things for us in helping honoring our own worthiness, which is a very powerful practice.
It is. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in comparison. I think one of the downsides of social media is we see these images of, what looks like ideal lives that people are having. And of course, nobody's going to post about the days that they feel yucky. And the word that I use is gremlins. When our gremlins are up, nobody's going to post about that or a picture of us in our pajamas eating ice cream.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just love what you're saying about, the flip side of that is really focusing on gratitude and the things that we do have and what our skills and talents are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, comparison is never going to make us feel good. Ever, because everyone is always going to have something that we don't have or do something better than we do, but we don't always look at the flip side of that. So that can become a very powerful practice in itself, especially if you're someone that struggles with not feeling good enough. And that was me for a really long time of my life. Like I felt like no matter what I did, it wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I really had to come to this place of understanding that I have to love myself right now. Like my worthiness does not get bigger or diminished based on what I do or don't do. Like it's there, it's part of me. And I have to be willing to love that now. And I have to do that because that's how I also love other people now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a huge turning point for me because it was really in regards to my oldest son. I was so frustrated. Patricia, I'm like, I had some really dark days of feeling like I was failing as a mother and, moments where I didn't even want to be around my kid. And that feels really bad as a mother. Like that is not something you're going to post on social media, right?
Right.
And I realized during those times that part of the reason why I was struggling is because I wasn't loving myself fully. And if I can't love myself fully, it's hard for me to love other people fully because all you see are flaws. We all have them. So I have to accept those and love who I am first. And then that love is able to extend out to the people around me in like a much more encompassing way.
I totally agree. For me, it's an ongoing process. And I guess I want to ask you, because it sounds like you've overcome this and it's not an issue for you. Am I hearing you correctly?
You mean not feeling good enough?
Yeah. It's like I heard you say, like, I love myself, and it sounds like you've worked through it.
I continue to work through it. It is definitely a practice, and I feel like I'm better at it. But I have good days and I have bad days. I have days I look in the mirror and I think, ugh. And then I remember, like, I'm here. I'm alive. Like, I am doing something. I'm making an impact. I'm here for a reason. And that reason is not about how much I weigh or about what size I wear or about if I yelled at my kids yesterday or if my laundry is done or if my toilet is clean, right? Like none of those things impact who I am as a person, who I was born to be. And that's always my returning point. Mm-hmm. So do I live in that place 100% of the time? Absolutely not. I don't know that that's possible.
Yeah.
But I return there way faster than I used to be able to.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. It's something that I'm hypersensitive to because my belief is that we ride the good times and then we learn to lean into the tough times. And when we're growing or stretching or changing, our life just has things that happen that are sucky. And we figure out how to feel it, lean into it, and ride it through. And when I see and hear things that have the implication of if you do this or if you take this, you will live a joyful life, I'm like, really? Really? Yeah.
I think that the idea of joy is a really interesting one to me. In fact, I was listening to a podcast today and the title of it was, Can You Be Ambitious and Happy at the Same Time? And it was super interesting. Like, it really thought-provoking for me because it was sort of asking the question, can you want more and feel like you have enough? I think that's something that I'm always sort of sitting with. Like, what is the balance point of that? What does it mean for me to be living with joy? Does that mean that I'm happy all the time? No, I don't think so. But it means that I can take a moment and be like, in this moment right now, like right now with you, Patricia, I am at a 10. Like, I am having a ball. This is exactly where I want to be and exactly what I want to be doing right now. And that feels really joyful. And if I can come to each moment in my life like that, even the hard ones, there can still be joy there. That's different from being laughing and happy all of the time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's really about the mix. And I think that especially as sensitives, that often I hear people say, like, why do I feel so sad and why do I feel so much? But my belief is to the depth that we can feel pain is also to the depth that we can feel joy. And if we only have the capacity to feel a little bit of pain, then we only have the capacity to feel a little bit of joy as well.
I love that. I love that so much. And you know what makes me think about too is a lot of people try to numb out negative emotions and feelings because they're uncomfortable. And so they overeat or they drink or they, binge out on Netflix or social media scrolling or whatever the thing is. But when you numb out that negative side, you also numb out the positive side. Like, you can't selectively numb.
Right.
Like, you're numbing all of it. We have to be willing to experience life fully. I think that's how life was made to be lived, honestly.
I totally agree with you. And my experience as a highly sensitive person is I was not taught how to calm and self-soothe. So for me, food is my drug of choice. And I know that it's really common for highly sensitive people to use things because we just need to take the edge off. If we haven't learned the tools to soothe and to self-regulate, I'm not making a judgment as to whether we should or shouldn't do it. I'm stating this is what happens for a lot of people because we get so overstimulated and we don't know how to create calm and soothing. We often use this stuff to try and take the edge off.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and, I think that this is where really developing a practice of self-care comes into play, because I see so many people just like going all of the time, and they're not stopping to give themselves what they need to feel the way that they want to feel. And so self-care can look like a lot of different things. It's different for everybody, but I think knowing what your go-to strategies are, like what you have time for in a given day and what you need in a given day, and really paying attention to that and having so much grace to allow other things to be set aside when you know you're going to be better off to lay down for 30 minutes or to get in the tub for an hour and a half. That was me the other day. I had just a very long day. I was on the whole day, around people the whole day. And I came home and my house was empty, which I wasn't expecting. And I was like, oh, I got in the tub just for like an hour and a half. It's like, I'm never going to leave here. But I had to find that way to decompress and to really take care of me. Otherwise, I wasn't going to be able to show up the next day for my family the way I wanted to show up.
Right. And often what happens is when we're not able to get our own needs met, we aren't able to show up in the best way for our families. And generally, as HSPs, we tend to be the glue that holds our family together. And I know over the holidays, my kid came back, they brought roommates, we had people in the house. I lost my recording space, my office. I didn't know how to take care of myself. I got so crabby and irritable. It was really, I'd forgotten that that was a place that I used to live in. And seeing that if I don't take care of myself, nobody wants to be around me. I don't even want to be around me.
Yeah. Yeah. We take it for granted. We think that it's being selfish to take that time, but it's 100% not selfish, because if you resent not taking it, that's not good. No one wants to be resented. No one wants to feel that coming at them. No one wants to be like live in a house full of guilt because we're not taking the time that we need for ourselves.
And we also model to our kids how to take care of themselves. That when, we feel guilty as moms saying no and not showing up and being at everything. But we also have an opportunity to model that sometimes I need to choose me before I choose you. And that gives them permission to choose them instead of somebody else.
Yeah. And I think explicitly saying that to kids is really important. I started doing that because my oldest is on the spectrum, and he does not read any sort of like emotional social cue very well. Mm-hmm. And so I started I would actually say it out so he would understand, like, right now I'm really angry. And so I need to have some time and space to myself. And actually we at one point defined it like, I'm putting my boundary up. I am putting myself inside of my fence, and you need to stay on the other side of that fence. But, it shows them that you're allowed to take time. You're allowed to go to your room and be by yourself. You're allowed to be grumpy, but do that on your own. Like not around everybody else. Go into a space where you can like cool off and do what you need to do to get back to you.
Yep. I would often tell my kids, like, guys, I'm really close to losing it today. So I'm going to ask you, to do something. But if you don't do it, I'm just letting you know that I don't have a lot of patience. And there's a good chance I'm going to lose my shirt. And it's not my shirt that I'm going to lose.
I have a lot of shirts like that.
There's so much about intuition. We just didn't get to all of it today. So there's never enough time.
No, that's okay though.
I would love to know, what are some of your superpowers being a highly sensitive person?
Well, one of my superpowers is actually linked to my intuition. And I really feel that I've been given the gift of being able to listen very deeply, not just to myself, but to other people. I feel like I can hear other people's inner voice when they talk to me. And that's one of the things that I really love about being an inner voice coach, because I help people connect to that voice. And part of the way that I do that is that I can hear it. Like when people talk to me, I can hear what is being said. And that definitely is one of my superpowers. Another one is I get amazing ideas for people. If you ever want ideas, come sit with me for an hour and talk to me, and I will just get hit after hit, like divine inspiration coming through me to you. And it's so funny because a lot of times it's not even about things that I know about or have any interest in. I get these like crazy ideas for people, and it really helps them to bring clarity to their own vision, which is exciting. And I love it because it hardly ever has anything to do with me. I'm just there. Like I'm just a conduit. And I really love that aspect of my work as well.
Wow. What are some of the challenges you experience as a highly sensitive person?
Well, now that I know that I'm one, I think I'm a lot more loving towards myself in what I used to see as things that I lacked. Right? So I think one of my biggest challenges was just feeling like I don't follow through on things. And now I see that it's not that I'm not following through. It's that, like you were saying, there's a rhythm. I ebb and flow. And that's okay. Like I'm allowed to do that. But that has been a challenge for me because I am a recovering perfectionist. So I feel like there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And that's hard. because when you're a highly sensitive person, your right way is maybe not what everyone else's right way looks like.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's never good enough. One of my favorite mottos is done is better than perfect.
Yes, so good. I also like, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
What do you do for play?
Okay, so I want to be honest with you. I saw this question on your like pre-sheet that you sent me, and I was like, it gave me anxiety.
Everybody usually laughs when I ask them because those of us that are deep thinkers, we don't do play so well. So I
I
just want you to
don't.
know, like, you're right in there with us.
I was like, oh, I don't know. What do I do for play? I don't know that I would call it play, but one of my very most favorite things to do is to sit on the couch and read a book all day.
Mm-hmm.
I love that so much. I love going to the gym. I really love going to the gym when I know like that some of my best girlfriends are going to be there and that we can talk and, like dance to the music and just like be together in our suffering while we're there. I really love being in the summertime, especially like by a lake and just being still, probably with a book in my hand. I feel like a lot of my playtime revolves around being still
Mm-hmm.
and being quiet, which makes it feel not very playful, but I think a lot of the other parts of my life are like very noisy and loud, and so that feels really good to me.
As you were talking, I asked this because it's obviously something that I struggle with and I'm curious about. And I was just thinking when you were talking, I think that we think of play as a very extroverted, outgoing activity when we think of what traditional play is. And what I'm finding almost everybody that comes on there are more ways that are restorative that help us tune back into ourselves, where I think the traditional concept of play is about it has to do with other people and expending energy, where I think for us it can often be our creative endeavors. My guess is your music is also a source of play for you, yes?
I don't think of it so much as being so because it is a quote unquote job for me, but I think I get so much energy. And so it doesn't feel like work. Like when I have a concert, I mean, I'm on the stage and I'm surrounded by these amazing musicians and we're making music together. That is not a job to me.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that I would do whether or not I got paid. And I'm like, feel so blessed that I'm in a position where I get paid to do something so amazing. So I do think that that's part of why I sort of sometimes am not sure what play means
Mm-hmm.
because I guess I play a lot. I play a lot in my sort of regular life. And so sometimes I just want to be quiet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What would you want to tell your younger self about being a highly sensitive person?
I think I would say to her, you are enough.
Mm.
You don't have to try so hard. You are enough. And that is something I tell myself still all the time. I oftentimes will come to a quiet place in my journaling and I ask the question, what do you need me to hear today? And almost always, do you know what my inner voice says to me?
What's that?
I love you. You are enough.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Kelly, tell us some projects that you're working on and where people can find you.
Well, you can find all of everything that I do at kellycovert.com. That's super easy to remember. I'm super excited about my latest project that I put out, which is tapping into your inspired potential. And what it is, it's a 5-day journaling meditation program. So it has journaling prompts, there's videos for every day, and it has for each day a beautiful journaling meditation that I created that really helps you understand what it means to be living into your inspired potential rather than up to your potential, which are two really, really different things. And this is perfect for people who are highly sensitive because it really is about tapping into your personal power rather than feeling like you have to measure up to some external standard.
Mm-hmm.
So you can find that on my website, kellycovert.com/potential. And I'm really, really proud of that.
Yay. I keep looking at the time and like, I want a 2-hour show. An hour is really just not long enough to have a really good conversation.
It has gone by so fast. I know.
Man, this has been so great, Kelly. Thank you so much for coming on. This has really just been a delightful conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Patricia. It's been my great pleasure.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Hey there. Thanks for listening. I often have some time between the time that I record an interview and then I jump back in to record the introduction and then this part, the outro. I don't know if you'd call it an outroduction. We just call it an outro. And there were a couple of thoughts that I've had since I did the interview. One of the ways that I personally use this, and I encourage my clients to do it when they're feeling like they're in a dilemma and they're not sure what to do, is if they're comfortable, I ask them to put their hand on their heart, close their eyes, take a couple of deep breaths, and whatever question they're struggling with, if there were no right or wrongs and there were no negative consequences, what would the answer to your decision be? This is something that often brings clarity, that when we talk about listening to that inner voice or our intuition, we often know what it is, but there's so much noise about what we think we should be doing or the right thing to do, or we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or we've got guilt, or anyways, this is a tool that I use. It has been really helpful, and it really seems to help when I've used it with my clients. The other thing is, since I did the 2 episodes on childhood emotional neglect, I'm really, man, it's just in my face how I lack self-discipline in certain areas and the ways that I distract myself from really being quiet and being in touch with my inner voice. There was a period of time when I was going to yoga a few times a week and I had some quiet time, and I really had built that in, and it really worked for me. And for a number of reasons, I've gotten away from it. And it's not black and white. I think we tend to think that I haven't exercised, I haven't meditated, I haven't done anything. And I think it shows up more in our lives than not. I'm walking my dog for close to an hour a day, and that's giving me some time. But what I'm aware of is I've really used my phone, games, social media as ways to stay distracted. I know we have very busy minds, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. So I've been trying to practice putting my phone down, trying to not bring my phone to bed with me. I have to listen to podcasts as I'm falling asleep. So I need to figure something out around there. I know about the EMFs being near my head. I'm already scared enough. I don't need anybody to tell me how scared I should be. But I'm really trying to be mindful about how much I'm on social media. I'm thinking about taking some apps off my phone, trying to just check in on my laptop a few times a day. And as I've been practicing this very imperfectly, I notice that spinning that I use to keep myself distracted, it starts to calm down, and I feel like I'm starting to land back in my body. I'm sure some of you can relate to this. And so what I can say is I spent a few days talking about how much this wasn't working for me. And I have people in my life that will allow me this space so that I can just talk about how much it isn't working without them trying to convince me or tell me why I should stop doing it or the benefits, so that I really had a chance to hear myself talk about how much this was keeping me from having peace. It's going to be an imperfect process because I know who I am. This is where the self-compassion and gentleness comes in. I bring this up because I think many of us want to be in touch with our intuition, and we distract ourselves with busyness or being involved with other people. It takes us away from our core and our center. And as deep thinkers and sensitive people, we do better when we can kind of land and settle in with that quietness that we need to have. I hope you find this helpful. So, if you are someone that's struggling, you feel like you need some help getting centered and quiet, you're not sure how to get in touch with your intuition, you have questions around parenting or your relationships, I do provide online counseling if you live in California. It's really amazing. People tend to be pretty reluctant initially, and once they try it, the connection that we have is great. And what I'm starting to see is there's some research and studies that are showing how effective online counseling is. And if you have a reason why it's difficult for you to get out of the house, or you've got chronic illness, or you've got kids or childcare issues, It's really wonderful to be able to stay in the comfort of your own home or your office or your car where you have privacy and to get a little bit of time for yourself in a therapeutic way. If you're interested, we can hop online for a free 20-minute call. You can try it out, no pressure or obligation. I really want to thank everyone for being here with me today. I really do appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. We have an amazing closed Facebook group called Unapologetically Sensitive, where we're building a wonderful community. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's our superpower. Have a blessed day.